Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Plank is going to be on here in a few minutes. He's come on the show before and just absolutely delivered huge value, how to really leverage yourself, your time, how to write a book in a freaking day. It like blew my mind. So I'm sure we're going to cover all that and more in this episode. It's going to be a blast. Make sure you stick around. Before that, let's talk about the sponsorship message. This is brought to you by the 21-Day Challenge. If you're an entrepreneur or a high achiever, you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, lost, you just want clarity, you want the support, you want the accountability, you want someone to hold your hand and kick your butt and remind you how great you are, that's the 21-Day Challenge, one-on-one accountability for 21 days. If you're interested, send me a message, chris@beyourgps.com, or find me on Facebook. Looking forward to hearing from you and helping you get started. Next up is the iTunes review of the week, and this week is this beak. Let me tell you about this beak, peeps. This week is by Sophia Wise One, and Sophia says, "Inspiration, that's the deal. Reminding me what's possible, keeping us on track. Thank you." Thanks so much, Sophia. I appreciate you. If you want to give us a review, go to beyourgps.com/iTunes, and you can leave a review there. Thanks so much in advance for doing that and letting us know what you love and what you want to see even more of. Now, I'm going to introduce this incredible human being, Robert Plank. Before that, though, make sure you grab a pen, grab paper, be ready to take notes because he shares the gold. He cuts through the BS and the nonsense. No need for that. Just get right down to the good stuff. That's who Robert is, and he has a lot of fun in the process. So stick around throughout the hour. You never know what one idea can transform the rest of your life. Robert Plank is an online business coach who would like to help you manage your time, get your life back, and simplify your daily activities. Using systems, checklists, and templates, you can write a book within an hour. Within not even a day anymore, it's an hour now. Within an hour, and become a published author within 12 hours. That is incredible. You can set up a membership site in a single day, create a blog or podcast in 5 minutes or less, and so much more. And we're going to be diving into all these juicy conversations. Robert, you ready to rock this, brother?
Born ready.
He's born ready. That's right, you were. Absolutely. You're now live on Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self. Robert, thanks for being here. Round 2. We're bringing the spice, the heat, the fire. Thanks so much for being here, man.
The gasoline, all of it. Yeah, it's been so long. It's been maybe a year and a half. I can't even remember what we covered. So, I mean, wherever you want to start, wherever you want to go, let's do it.
The best things will come out. I know. I feel it. Awesome. So let's dive right into the theme of the day, which today is how to fly. And fly stands for first love yourself. So, Robert, how does this principle show up in your life? How to fly, how to first love yourself?
First loving myself? I mean, I'd say it's comes down to not beating myself up. It's so easy for us to be our own harshest critic and let something that somebody said to us on the playground when we were like 8 years old come back, and that person might be dead now, or that person probably doesn't even remember us, but we let that negativity sneak back up on us. And I mean, you're a mindset guy. You know all about that red car syndrome, that reticular activation syndrome, where the bad stuff, the negative, gets higher priority, because in caveman days, if the tiger jumped out at you, then that was the most important thing. But now we're living in more enlightened times when there's a million reasons to be happy. I mean, I think in like 1970, only 30% of the world had clean water, something like that. And now it's like 90%. So we're living in the best time possible. I mean, like you and I were saying a couple of minutes ago, there's technologies out there like Zoom and like Upwork and like just ways to stream videos. So things are better than ever. And we're all kind of maybe a little more introspective than we have been in the past. So it's easy to let all the bad stuff take over. And so yeah, to answer your question, I give myself a break and realize that I'm not going to be perfect, and that I won't always be able to maximize everything, right? Because sometimes we get stuck in that trap of saying, I'm gonna have the most free time or get the most out of every day, and it's just not possible. So do your best, give yourself a break, just be a better person than you were yesterday, right?
Yeah, that's so powerful, man. And I hear you're really meeting people where they're at, which is the desire for more, the desire for more efficiency, more money, more time freedom, more happiness, more, freedom, do whatever they want when they want. And in the process of achieving that and growing and expanding our capacity, our systems, our capabilities to achieve that, we get to have grace with ourselves. We get to trust the process. We get to allow things to be not perfect and kind of messy, and just enjoy the journey, enjoy the process.
Yeah, amen to that. And there's always going to be chaos to be cleaned up, but
Yeah.
and there's always going to be waste, but that's totally part of it. I mean, I
Yeah.
think back to when I used to blog a lot, and I
Mhm.
used to do a lot of solo podcasting a lot, like cranking out the content like you
Yeah.
are. And I'd
Yeah.
walk around with my phone and just type in different ideas
Mm.
in my phone that I thought of on my walk. And I'd always feel bad because the list of ideas kept growing and growing, and I'd only probably put 10% of those into use, right? I have a
Mm.
list of 100 different bullet points of things I could do a podcast episode about or a blog post about, and I'd only put 10 into practice.
Mm.
And that's okay, right? That means I'm putting the top
Top
10%
10. Yeah.
out
Yeah.
there, and the bottom 90% is just the kind of the noise that
Mm.
is necessary to get to the good stuff. So it's like a better way of thinking about it. It's more
Mm.
healthy that way.
That's so powerful, man. Great share, Robert. And for those who are just connecting with you, I mentioned you're a business coach. You help people do the podcasting, write their own book, put those systems into place. Tell us a little bit more about you, what your clients come to you for.
All right. Well, they come to me these days for a podcast and a book, and
Mhm.
sometimes a membership site.
Yeah.
So my course for podcasting is called podcastcrusher.com.
Ooh.
And then, yeah, see, I got some props. I got favorite stuff here. And then, and so that's to get the podcast going, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be fancy at first. I mean, you look at Gary Vaynerchuk's videos from
Yeah.
10 years ago. His earlier stuff was the most homemade, basic stuff, and you can ramp up later on. And then my course for making a book is called makeaproduct.com. And
Mm.
that's the whole
Great.
thing where you can make a book in a day. So this book,
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
pretty thin. It's like, I don't know, 50, 60 pages.
Mm.
And I spoke it out in an hour, and then went through the whole process of getting the transcript cleaned up,
Mm.
hiring out a cover, jumping through on, and this was thought of and published in 12 hours in one day, same day book, because it doesn't have to be complicated. I could have let myself take a year to do it,
Mm.
but I would have got distracted. I would have beat myself up. It would have been a total waste of time. So there's that value in the efficiency. And
Mm.
then my podcast is Marketer of the Day, and I recently did what's called a compilation book.
Heck
And
yeah.
I think in the pre-call, you and I mentioned like this is something that's been on your mind too, like
Yeah.
having the guests of your podcasts pay you to
Yeah.
put a chapter in your book,
Yep.
and then you put it all together and then use that as the advertising money to then promote the book, and then everybody wins, right?
Yeah.
You have a book that you didn't have to create, and then the people who you're building relationships with, your other podcast guests, they can become a published author by just putting a chapter in there. And so yeah, it's networking.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it's also maximizing what you've already created once. You know, it's like you put all these ideas down in a notepad, and you're taking notes. Hey, what are the things I want to talk about, right? And you put all those top ideas down, then you execute on them, and you have these amazing podcast interviews and people who show up and they shine, they give the gold. It's not just using it once and put it out on podcasts and okay, time to move on to the next thing and get back on the hamster wheel of creation. It's like, how do we think differently about what we've created to reach people in different ways? And whether that's putting it together in a book or putting it into a membership site like you were talking about, or even like an online course or whatever it is, there's so many different ways to repurpose. And I think that's the age that we're living in. It's not to go out and create more, but it's to create different and unique, and to build the brand on what we've already done and the people that we've already connected with. How do we add more value to the person who came on our podcast once? Well, we give them another product that we can create with them. We give them another offer, another opportunity to interact and engage with us and build a relationship.
Oh yeah, and that is a painful lesson to learn and to remember, that we have to actually market that stuff, right? Because people always talk about content creation, and it's like, well, what if you created all day long and made a new YouTube video every hour, and you looked at your YouTube channel, it was like no views, two views. Who is that really helping? Sometimes we have to go back and get some traffic sent into those things that we already created. Sure.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, Robert. So this is a great share. And for people who are just meeting you and connecting with you for the first time, let's go back into your journey and talk about how did you become this marketer? How did you become this process driven guy? And I know you're a bit of a geek and a nerd like me, loving that technology, loving the programming. I started off in electrical engineering where I got my love of systems and processes. And I think you have a similar beginning. So take us back and let us know how it all began, man.
All right. Well, I was really, it turns out I was really good at this computer programming stuff. When I was like maybe 12 years old and there was some like summer camp computer class, and I was so stressed out about it because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm taking a computer class for summer. I went into my dad's office and I found this book that he'd never read, but it was about like Object C programming.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about this thick. And I was like 12 years old. I stayed up all night and I like read every page of the code, and I like took almost like word for word notes, and I'm like, oh, I got to learn all this computer code.
Oh my gosh.
And then when I got to the summer camp thing, they were like, well, this is what a mouse is. Maybe you see, this is what a keyboard is. And I was like, oh no, I over prepared. I got so stressed out, but it was like all that was like really easy for me. Whenever I took a computer class, I just would fly through the textbook in like a week. And so that became a little bit of a career for me. But then I realized that it was a dead end. It was a path of working for someone else. And the problem with, unlike electrical engineering, the problem with programming is that you can very easily be like the grunt, right? You can be the high school kid in the basement and making, $30,000 a year. And then if you want to move up, then you have to be more businessy and be more about managing people. And do that either. So the solution, of course, in this day and age, you create your own business, right? You do internet marketing. And I didn't really know where to start with that. So I began with freelancing, and I would find marketers who needed a certain type of web page built or a certain type of plugin or app built, and I would make it for them. And that was a step up, but that was another dead end, because then it's like if you stop putting in the hours, if you stop working, then the money stops.
Yeah, and before we go any further, I wanted to go back into how you were so self-motivated at 12 to study the code, and like, how did you get that level of self-discipline? Is that something that you've always had, and are you able to transfer that to other people to be so self-driven, self-led?
I mean, a lot of it is the nervousness, the anxiety, the guilt of not working, right? Thinking of like, I'm going to do with my life. I have only so many hours in a day, only so many years on this planet. And it's really easy to criticize or to like judge other people. But something that has been stuck in my head pretty much every day for the last couple of years is this thing called the mirror, which is if you notice something bad in other people, it's probably because you're self-conscious about that within yourself and you don't even realize, right? So I mean, we know about this, and maybe some of us don't want to admit it, but if we think, well, that person acts so unprofessional, if that person, they can't express their ideas very well, it's like, well, the reason you're thinking that, the reason you're even noticing that is because you're a little insecure about that with yourself. So I was just in that race against time. You'll hear about, Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, and they have this really cool idea. And I didn't want to, number one, get stuck in that mode of like wondering if I had my true potential, or worried that and then someone else beat me to it. So there was that aspect of it. And then number two, I didn't want to get stuck. I didn't want other people to pass me. Like, imagine being 60 and working in some office, and then that sounds like a total nightmare, right? So I just didn't want to get stuck on some kind of track or some kind of path where I was just going through the motions. And so I was looking into, what kind of skills did I have, or what did I enjoy, or what could make me stand out, and then try different things. And I mean, computers seem to be it, but not everything computers, right? Not the tech support stuff, not the desk. For some reason, it's like the web programming kind of thing. And I mean, I'm really bad, for example, at like anything like construction, carpentry, and any of that stuff. I'm terrible at it. Like I had a problem with my fence a couple years ago. I paid someone else to do it. So
That's right.
I mean, I realized that there are areas where I'm really good and
Yeah.
tons more areas where I'm not good. So why fight it? Why not go with what you're good at and what you enjoy too, and what makes money and what people want, right?
Yeah, yeah. Stay in your genius, man. Like that's what I think a lot of people especially in the entrepreneurial world, they start off in their entrepreneur journey thinking they have to do everything, and maybe they do at some level because they have to understand the business. They don't have the capital, the startup capital to get things started. A lot of people are like bootstrapping and getting started with nothing, or they're getting started while they're working in their corporate job and building a side business, side hustle, or starting to do freelancing, different stuff like that. So I think that mindset of how do I, as quickly as possible, delegate everything that isn't in my zone of genius, it often takes people a long time to learn. Oftentimes there's a lot of struggle and hardship and feeling like exhausted and burnt out, and finally at their wits end they're like, I gotta do something about this, feeling like I'm all spent, I'm all used up. And it sounds like you really accessed that early on and started freelancing to be able to, and then the progression past freelancing was, okay, I know there's certain things I'm really really good at, how do I stay in that genius zone?
Yeah, and there's definitely nothing wrong with freelancing at first, or freelancing, like budgeting your time properly. I mean,
Right.
no one really wants to get stuck there forever,
Right.
but I think that's a way going about it, of generating at least a little bit of money. That way you can afford that tool, or you can afford to outsource.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've seen this too. You've seen people who they keep a running tally of how much money put into their business, right?
Yeah.
And they say, well, I've saved up this money from this, and I put in $5,000 now, I put in $7,000 now. Thinking that's a really unhealthy way of looking at it. A better way is to be like, okay, well, maybe the freelancing is generating dollars a month, $1,000 a month, and you funnel that back in to grow more. I mean, it just feels like that's a less rough way of going about it.
Yeah, yeah. So you were doing the freelancing, and then you evolved into applications. Was that like right after freelancing? You're like, hey, I know I can do applications, or I think what was it? Not applications, but the not widgets, but what's
Plugins?
what is it? Plugins.
Yeah. So
Plugins.
what happened was, so I did like a little bit, and that got old really quickly because, and I think a lot of it was because I didn't really set, I set some boundaries, but then I let my clients break those boundaries. So
Mm,
I'd say, I go to some people, like marketers and people like that, and they'd say, well, I want to make this thing, I want to make this software, for example, that tracks links, or
mhm,
that runs an affiliate program, or that can do a split test. And sometimes they'd say, I have no idea what I want it to look like, or they say, make it similar to this competing product. And I'd maybe spend a week doing that. And and beforehand, I'd say, okay, well, I think that's going to be this amount of work.
mm,
So it'll be $600.
mm.
And then I'd spend a week doing that. And then they'd say, okay, great. But in action, can you add this, 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 this? And I'd say, well, that'll be another $600. And they'd say, well, no. Or they say, I'll pay $200. And when I was 17, 18 years old, it's like, what could I really say to that?
Right.
And what I saw with one of the interviews in this book was, there was this guy, I think like Joe Kashurba. Have you met that dude?
Uh-uh.
He does like some kind of like web agency, but he had a really interesting, is that if you only have one or two clients, you're basically an employee to them,
Yep.
right? Because they can jerk you around, they can
Yep.
not pay you or pay you less, or ask for stuff for free. But if you have tons of clients,
Mm,
then now you have options, right? Now you can get rid of the bottom 20%, or you can pile on so much work that you don't know what to do with, and then you outsource that work and then check on it. And so the freelancing got kind of old, and then I began creating information products, and I
mm,
began I would basically create some of these plugins, or some of these things to go on web pages,
mm,
and I would say, now that I've made it, let me teach other people how to do it, or let me give people the web page template or the
mm.
code to plug into their web. That way I could do the work once and then get paid from hundreds of different people. So that was really great because I felt like I had more freedom that way, and I wasn't reporting to just one person, and I wasn't on the clock. I was kind of on the clock as far as getting enough money coming in to pay the bills, but I wasn't on the clock as far as, like if you have that client and they say this date, then I wasn't stressed out in that way. And I mean, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too these days, right? With everyone with their side hustles or having multiple jobs, if you can manage your time properly, there's nothing to say you can't. Little freelance, have some courses or some products, have some high ticket clients or outsource stuff. So you have all sorts of options. So yeah, it went from the freelancing to more of the information products.
That's awesome. And that was really to be able to stay in your zone of genius and deliver at scale. So it's not so much of trading time for dollars, which a lot of people get stuck in that trap of, having that one or two clients who they get all their money from. So they have to they're almost a slave to those clients versus, hey, how can I build something that kind of goes out automatically, that goes out in a systemized way? And once people press the pay button, then they get things on a steady, consistent basis. It drips out the content to them. They get it at the pace that they want, whatever that might be. And we can really create those systems to deliver it in the best way for them and for us.
Yeah. And I mean, you can put a lot of things together to make yourself unique, because sometimes people only think of a course or a membership site as some videos, but you can say, well, hey, I'm Chris Burns and I want to help you with your mindset and I want to get you motivated. Yeah. You're going to join this course and we're going to give you not just these videos, but we're going to give you these daily tasks. We'll give you access to this app. We'll give you these monthly masterminds. I'll meet with you once a month. You can set your own rules and add all kinds of interesting stuff. I mean, you could add a dashboard and say you log in every day and put in your tasks or measure your health, measure your weight. So you can assemble all these different things and make a solution that is uniquely you. And that way you're not competing with just a book or just some videos. You have all this combination of different things. Have your own system.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, man. So at what point did you recognize that books were critical to you growing your business and your influence and your income?
Probably maybe 6-7 years. And maybe even a little bit before that, I got to a point where I realized that I couldn't be just the geek. I couldn't be just the guy not on camera. And I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this too, right? It's like, if you're the person that's too shy to make a webinar or a live or a YouTube video, there's tons of people out there on the internet who are exactly like you, but they don't have those reservations, or at least they push through a little bit. So right. in order to stand out, you have to be somewhat of a speaker, and you have to do somewhat of that networking
personality.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not hard. Or maybe it's hard in the fact of letting your barriers down and letting your own personality through, but it's not like you have to have a carefully crafted persona. It's not like you have to be an actor. Just kind of let your own stuff out there. And so yeah, the information products were great, but I would be making $20, $30, $40, $50, just that sort of range. And the low ticket customers are a little more high maintenance than the high ticket.
That's crazy.
And so yeah, it's totally counterintuitive, but it's true. And so I'd have a lot of people who they pay me and then chase me around and email me every day and say, help me with this, add this feature. And I'm thinking, I mean, I will, but not for $7, right? For $7, I spent 6 months on this plugin. So I got tired of that. And I think the breaking point for that was I got to the point where I made enough money for my income where I've been free about 10 years now. And I sent an email to my list saying, I quit my job, I put in my notice yesterday. And this one guy who was one of my very first early on customers, he said, well, because you quit your job, can you refund this? And I'm like, why do you want refunds for things that you bought months ago? And he says, well, because you can afford it now. You're rolling in money. You quit your job. And I'm like, this is the time I need the money. I'm taking And so I said, whatever, better to move on, and I refunded him all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there was one thing he'd bought that he'd forgot to ask me to refund,
Yeah.
and then later on put in a chargeback with his bank, and it didn't kick in until 9 months later, which was on a Christmas morning.
Wow.
Whatever. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's only like refunds are like a tiny percentage of our income, but still, back to the red car syndrome, we exaggerate the negative and we think, oh, that's really gonna bother me. But I realized that just the fact that it was upsetting me slightly made me realize that I had to go more high ticket, right? Like the low ticket stuff was great. It was a great way to prove that I could make my own income enough to quit the job. But sometimes we have to graduate to the next level, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, like this headset, I'm using it to listen to you. It's a $20 headset.
Right.
But after a while, I was like, got to get the $100 microphone, right?
Yep.
Move up to the next step.
Yeah.
And so yeah, same deal with the products and the courses. I was like, okay, well, selling the $20, $50 stuff is great to get someone in the funnel, but I need to be selling $500 stuff, $1,000 stuff. And the way to do a little more marketing with getting on video, doing live webinars, doing an actual product launch. And then I began up with a few different marketers who have the marketing skills, but not the programming skills, and what they're doing. And I was like, they're not really working that hard, and they're not really doing that much. And I just realized that it wasn't that much of a leap for me to push myself out of my comfort zone and then just be the marketer too.
Yeah.
And so that's when things changed for me. And I was like, okay, I need to get out of my shell and don't just be the shy guy who's programming. Actually, like be more of a speaker, be more of the person that can show people how it's done. And I mean, that's why I'm here, right? And that's why you're here. So that way we can not be like typing a blog post out. We can just be ourselves and be on camera.
I love it. And what would you say were the key distinctions that had you grow early on as a marketer, that built up your identity and the results of being a marketer?
So I think the thing that helped the most was paying attention to the feedback loop. And I mean, like we see this where someone will say, okay, I got to write my book. And they'll say like, I'm going to go and rent a cabin for 3 months and I'm just going to type away. And that sounds really lonely. And that doesn't sound very motivating, but a better way of going about it is by having the feedback. Like I don't have the comments open up, and I'm sure there's like Facebook comments from us talking. And even when you were on during the break and you were like doing your thing and singing to the music, amped up, jazzed up from people who were watching you, and people who were sending comments. And so yeah, like I early on, even early on with the programming stuff, I would be like thinking about like, what kind of things should I create? What kind of plugins? But then when people began telling me what they needed, or when I began seeing their frustrations, and they'd say, well, I want to put a pop-up on a web page, but then bind all these things together, or I want to make a membership site, but I have to do all these steps. So seeing other people's frustrations tapped into like accountability in a way, because like I saw where people were struggling and there was just nothing out there to help them. And I was like, well, now I need to swoop in and save the day. So I think that that anytime that I feel like burned out or unmotivated or uncertain, then I go back to the people I'm helping, right? I go back to my following, I go back to my list, I ask them questions, I ask them to reply to me. Where are you stuck? Where do you need help? And then I create that solution. And sometimes the solution is it's a dud. So there's kind of those multiple steps to it, right? There's asking about people are stuck, what they need, and then creating that solution and doing it as fast as you can. That way you have somewhat of a proof of concept, and then let people vote with their wallets and see if they buy that thing they said that they needed. And if they did, then create more of that, right? Create the bigger and better course, so go in or edit the book. So two steps there, right? Ask people what they want and then make it and see if they buy it. And if they buy it, then figure out the next thing.
Yeah. What would you say is essential as a part of having people want to buy something that you put together. You validate that, hey, would you find this valuable? Would you buy this? And people say, yeah, that sounds awesome. Now, from that step of saying, I know I got something that is awesome and I know that there's a need for it in the marketplace, what is essential for the execution of that?
So I think that you need to do somewhat of a course correction, trial and error,
Mm-hmm.
and try out your material. And that means that you create a presentation, create a webinar, put it out what things excite people or not.
Mm-hmm.
Do a product launch, send out different emails, and see if this email got more clicks or this email got more people to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And what's super weird and counterintuitive is that the thing that excites your audience is probably not going to be the thing that excites, right? and so like me and my business partner were in Thailand like years ago, and we were both really stressed out about this presentation. We were selling a $2,500 package, and we like rehearsed in the hotel room, and we were like, okay, I'll say this and you say that. And then we were about to go on stage, and the guy before us was like this amazing speaker, and he was like shouting and walked into the audience, and we thought, oh man, this guy's awesome, we're awesome. And people didn't really go for the shouty motivational guy. Like I liked him, but as far as buying,
yeah,
I mean, that people didn't really buy. And then me and my business partner then went up and we taught a few cool things, and a few people bought, but it didn't really blow the doors off. And then the guy after us, he was, well, first of all, he was wearing jean shorts and flip-flops. And then he started his presentation apologizing about how hungover he was because he was all night. And then he had an hour time slot, and I think he only used like 10 minutes, and I think he went, but almost everyone in the room bought from him. Wow. And I'm like, I don't understand it. This guy, low energy, like saying all the wrong things, stumbling around. But the reason why people bought was he opened up his computer and he showed this way of creating a funnel where there was like boxes and lines drawn, and everyone was mesmerized by the high level, big picture overview diagram. And so like the lesson I got from that was, why fight it? If people are looking for that kind of thing, if they're looking for some kind of software tool that gives them the whole flow chart map, then you don't want it. What you want is this other thing I'm trying to shove down your throat. I mean, why go for that? And so like, especially with software, sometimes there's just stuff that sometimes like I think is super basic, super simple, but people say we want it. So simple things like landing page software. I thought, well, why does anyone need landing page software? Why not grab a WordPress theme, or why not click this button to get rid of your sidebar? People want it. And then, so I think to myself, why fight it? Or there's this one plugin that we have that for WordPress called Plugin Dashboard, where basically you can check all these boxes and say, I want legal pages on my site. I want a contact, SEO, and you click all these boxes and then it fills it up. And I was like, do people really want that? But then I did a webinar for it and everyone got excited about it. So it's like, sometimes you might have an idea or a presentation, and you will need to know these 10 different things. And then it might turn out that they only care about 2 of those 10 things. And then the 2 things that, because you tried out the material, then you said, okay, well, even though I don't really deep down understand why they want these 2 things, like the picture or the diagram or the flow chart, I'll put it in there because that's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. And how much have you seen your intuition grow about what people want and knowing what they want? Or would you say you started just to trust more and more your process of getting the feedback, getting the market feedback from the people who are in your list and in your community?
Yeah, I feel like the intuition has grown, and I think that just what it comes down to is focusing on the emotion. Well, there's so the emotions, as far as like it's easy for me to forget to remember how to relate to people when they say they're frustrated with their website or they're burnt out, and to just use some of those things in there. And then also to if I'm doing a launch or something like that, to ask my list where they're stuck and then
Yeah.
focus on, sometimes they'll all say a certain keyword or a certain key phrase. And so for a while I was teaching webinars, and all these people were replying that they said, well, they didn't want to do a webinar because they were worried about the prep time. And it's like, why is everyone using that phrase, like from cooking? That's like from the amount of time it takes to get their presentation ready. And then over and over, I thought to myself, why fight it? Why not meet them where they're at, to paraphrase you from earlier, and talk to them in their own language? That way they're more comfortable. That way they'll pay attention. And then once you have their attention, then you can move a little bit, not too far, but get them over to see your community, right? You did a little bit of a reciprocity. You understood their problem, and then now they're a little bit obligated to say, now they want to understand what that solution is. So yeah, as far as the intuition, half of it is remembering to play into the emotions, and the other half is to pick up on the language they use or the keywords.
Yeah, that's powerful, Robert. And one of the things I know we want to talk about is the ability to sell something before we've actually gone out and made it and put all this energy and effort into creating the content and doing the videos and creating all the content, the stuff. And instead to do more of like a framework, or say, here's what you'll get. How do we know where we're at in that balance? How do we know how much is too much? How do we know how much is enough to be able to sell something to someone, to have enough of an outline or enough of deliverables to be able to sell it before we've actually made it?
I mean, you mostly have to guess, I think. Yeah. And I think that, well, I don't know. I think that there's definitely value in thinking about the magic, and maybe thinking about, like, when you were a kid, you didn't know how things worked, right? Like your parents turned the key in the car and it made noise and it revved up and it got you places, but you were a kid. You didn't know that there was an internal combustion engine. You didn't know there's oil and gas and the radiator with water. So there's something about tapping into that childlike curiosity, or the magical feeling that anything is possible. So I think that a good exercise for anyone who's thinking about like, well, should I make a course and sell some seats and then create the course, or like with this case with the compilation book, I mean, I sold people on their chapter and then put it together. Is whatever thing that you're thinking about selling, like if it's a book or a course or something, to write the sales letter of it before you create it. Right? So to come up with the headline and come up with bullet, a story that and talk about the problem and talk about the solution. And by doing that, you might be using your imagination, and by creating things out of thin air, because it really sucks to have a whole big book or a whole course created, and you're like, okay, now I need to kind of look at page 50 and say, oh, now I got to make this thing that's uninteresting sexy, or let me look at page 200 and make this thing sexy. Instead, you start with the sexiness, and then maybe you'll look at that after the coffee is worn off or something, and you say, well, maybe of bullet points. But I think there's something to looking at that end goal. And even like a few minutes ago, you're writing the screen about, like, well, what am I going to get out of this, or what's my purpose for doing this, and not worry so much about the mechanics or about the technicalities, but focus on the results, right? And not focus so much on all the time and all the work that you're going to be putting into it. Focus on the result that's going to come out of it. So if you have, and even if you have a book, write the Amazon description first, or write 10 bullet points selling that book first, and then go and create the thing that then fulfills that. And any time that you first before you create it, especially if you haven't done it before, it's going to be a little scary. But I think the advantage to that model is, let's say that you have an idea for a $1,000 class on how to make money with real estate or something. Then and you sell it and you sell 0 copies, well, then you don't have to do it, right? So, and if you sell it and you sell 10 copies, then you say, well, even that's a win, because even though maybe you say, I only sold 10 copies, I would have liked to sell, but you sold 10 copies before you even created it. So now you made some money up front, and then you can do the work to fulfill that, and then you can go ahead and sell it again. And a lot of people, they do all the work up front. They create this whole course up front, and then when it only sells a couple, they say, oh no, I wish I had a time machine, because now I spent 6 months, I only sold 2 copies, and by the end of that, they're tired. But by selling the seats first, then you bring in that whole concept we talked about of serving people, right? And of helping people out and solving problems. And so now you have this group of people that are going to tell you what to put into your course, and then you'll be motivated to not let them down. So it's like it gives you that renewed motivation by selling it first, at least I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that once you see that there's interest and people are like, yeah, I want it, and they buy it, they put their money where their mouth is. You're like, oh, awesome! How can we keep this flow going? There's something here. There's energy here that we can really tap into, and I think that's something that's really inspiring as entrepreneurs, because a lot of the ideas that we have, we're like, oh, it's my baby, but when we put it into the marketplace, if it gets shot down, we're like, oh, it hurts.
My dreams are dashed.
To get
sure.
the wins and get people to validate our ideas and what we think is going to work. That's really powerful. And I wanted to ask you about, in terms of marketing and sharing the benefits, selling the benefits. What do you think is for people? Because a lot of people overemphasize and over exaggerate what is possible in a course, and there's like hyperbole in benefits of what people can get. How do we make sure that we stay within like our ethical and in integrity promises before we've actually built something? If we think we can build it, but we aren't 100% sure, and we're going to be going through the process of building it once we've sold it. How do you invite us to balance that dynamic?
I mean, I think the solution to that would be to first of all get as excited as possible for that first draft of writing that sales letter, and then go back and look at it in a few different mind. And that doesn't mean you have to wait months, but if you get all excited and then sleep on it, and then wake up and look at it again, and then maybe take a walk or take a drive and just clear your head, get in a different at it again, so that way you can have that balance between, or like maybe not balance, but you can keep everything in the right zone of being exciting, because you don't want to just be the most boring person ever, but then also staying within the bounds of what's possible and what's ethical. And I think that, I don't know, like most people I see they don't have the problem of being too hypey. They have the problem of not believing in themselves. And so what you're making me think of is, I was coaching a bunch of years ago this other programmer who created like a WordPress security plugin, right? Because you used to hear about WordPress sites getting hacked, and they need to be hardened, and you need to lock it down and stuff like that. And I told him to make a sales letter, to look at all of these news articles and all of these statistics saying like, this 300,000 sites are hacked this year, or there's all like this percentage of sites are wide open. And he was shy about doing that, and I'm like, why be shy? You have the results to back it up. And he was saying, I was saying, like, you should have a hand that said something like, well, someone's trying to hack into your right now. And I should word it as, maybe someone could be hacking into your site. And I'm saying, like, why? Make the language complex. And if you're doubtful of it, then find the proof to back it up. And this guy, he could have pulled up a report showing 300 failed hack attempts on, put that screenshot on the page. But there's usually a way to say what it is that you're trying to say. And I mean, if someone out there is worried about saying income claims that like you could say, because that's especially with like FCC stuff, then make it about your income claims, right? And don't exaggerate stuff, but say, here's my story, here's my case study, and I want to do the same to you. So many times there's just a little tweak needed to get things to where you need to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's powerful. And I want to switch gears into the book. And for anyone who wants more info about the book, I know we covered it a little bit in the last interview as well, but just to catch people up, how do we do the outline of a book or write a book in an hour and then have it published within 12 hours? How did you do that, man?
So the secret is having somewhat of a structure, but not too much of a structure, right? Because if you have so much of a structure, they're going to have such a detailed outline that the book won't be exciting, right? If you're like, here's my 50-page outline for my 50-page book, you've already written it, but then going in the other direction is also bad, right? If you say, well, now I've got I've written one page, got 49 pages to go, right? And so I get stuck all the time writing a book, and it's because I deviate from this system. And so I can walk you through the system, but the key of this whole thing is to ask questions and to make the outline of your book full of questions. The title of your book, question. Every chapter of your book, question. And so that way, when you create the outline that way, the answers are just going to flow out of you, and it'll tie back into that concept of helping people. And especially if you ask your list, ask your following about problems, questions they have, those can go into your book. And the good thing about questions is that you can't help but answer them, but then it's black and white if you've answered a question or not, right? So if we say, what is meditation, it's kind of clear if you've actually covered that or not.
Right.
And so basically the process for this whole creating a book in an hour and then having the whole process done in a day is basically the big picture is step 1, you outline it. Step 2, you dictate it. Step 3, you get the transcript back and you clean it up, and then you submit it to Amazon and jump through their hoops of submitting the cover, of giving them the Word document of like the inside of the book, and doing things like setting the title and the price. And so the toughest part for people, because to get the book on Amazon, it's pretty straightforward. You fill in their form, you follow the steps. But as far as getting that book created, there's so many issues of, it's going to take me so long. I'm not a writer, guess myself, I'll go back and edit it. And so the process of getting that book created is that, first of all, you use a mind mapping tool to get the book created. I like to use a tool called MindMeister, because browser, you can do some on your computer, do some on your laptop, and you create these thought bubbles in a structured way. So that way you're not just creating a huge mess, but then you're also creating something that you can, or pull thought bubbles to be sub thought bubbles. And so basically my process is I think of what's the topic of the book, what's the question, and in this case it's how to get more organized. And this book, and I was thinking, okay, well, I could talk about things like using an online scheduler, like a Meet Me, Calendly, a Time Trade. I can talk about sharing files and backing up my computer in Google Drive. I could talk about using Gmail to manage my email. I could talk about using a help desk. And so I listed of these questions about this. So the main question, the title is, how do I get more organized? And then one subtopic there, one question is, what is Gmail? So I knew I wanted to talk about, but just by saying chapter 1 Gmail, that's not interesting. But if I say, what is Gmail? That's a question that's right there in front of my face that I can't help answer. So the title of the book, we change it later, but the title at first is how to organize. And then I think of 10 topics there. So one topic is, what is Gmail? One topic is, what is Google Drive? One topic is, what is Calendly? So I think of 10 of those. And then I think of 10 of those. And usually what happens is ideas number 1, 2, 3, 4 are pretty good. They're the things that I already had in my head. But then I get stuck around question 5, question 6, question 7, and I just throw out something that's not that great because I told myself I had to think of 10. But because I got through those bad questions, the weak questions, questions 8, 9, 10, pretty good. And they're like things that I wouldn't have thought of if I hadn't exhausted the obvious stuff and then trudged through the mud of the bad questions and then come up with some good ones. So now we have a list of 10 questions or 10 chapters in our book. And then because it's a mind map, we can drag and rearrange and say, here's a more logical order, or this is more fun, or maybe we'll give them some beginner stuff and then some case studies and things like that. And you can play around right on your screen as far as the order of things. And then we say, so you've thought of the title of your book, which is the question that the whole book answers. You've listed your 10 chapters of your book, which we phrase as questions. That way it's clear what the objective is. And we've rearranged. But now we say, well, now 3 of those chapters, those questions have to go, which can be sort of painful, right? Because you're like, it's my baby. I thought of some of these things. And so you might say, well, maybe question number 6, it's okay, but it doesn't really fit in with the others. So maybe it will, or maybe we'll say question number 7, it's important, but it's the weakest of the 10. So maybe I'll merge it with question number 5. So I think in my case, I think I ended up merging. I think I was going to have a chapter on, which, as you know, was like a huge lifesaver in this day and age as far as staying organized. But then I realized, well, I'm not sure if I could have a whole chapter on Google Calendar. So I merged it with the Gmail chapter. So I had a chapter on Gmail and Google Calendar. So now that the title of that was, what is Gmail and Google Calendar? And so by doing this, by listing up 10 questions, we end up going through that middle part of the weak questions to get to the good ones. And then we ensure that every chapter in our book is going to be important, right? And it's going to be action packed. And even if it's short, it'll be full of all the good stuff. So just to recap, we said the title of our book's a question. We listed 10 questions that are each chapters in our book, rearranged, compressed it down into 7. And then in order to flesh out each chapter, I think we talked about this a year and a half ago, to flesh out each chapter, we do a thing called why, what, how to, what if. And I'm sure you've heard of that acronym for that sort of stuff, but it means that basically you want to avoid the blank page syndrome, right? And if we say, what is Gmail and what is Google Calendar, you're like, I don't know, do I start with the history looks like? And so instead we break down the chapter and say, the first a little bit is, why do I need Gmail and Google Calendar? The second bit is, what exactly is Gmail and Google Calendar? What do I need to know just looking at it? The third question we're asking is, how do I use Gmail and Google Calendar? And then the final question is, what if I use Gmail and Google Calendar? And this works really well for a bunch of reasons, because some people who are taking in your content, reading your book, some people are only focused on the why, right? They don't really care too much about how things are done. Just, why do I even care about it? Some people are the what if types. They don't really care too much about the details, just what are the possibilities once I use this? And then what's also good is that by doing it in the sequence, it also follows the same pattern of like a problem and a solution. It follows the same pattern that, like, when you take someone on a journey with the sales letter or with a story where there's like a beginning, a climax, and the end, you go, why is this important? What are you about to show me? Now, what are those how-to steps? And then now that I know the steps, now what if I put this into action? And so structure works out is, for each of those 7 questions, you break it down into why, what, how to, what if, and then you plan on speaking it out, and you record each of those little sections for 2 minutes each. Now, it's easy for anyone to, you could talk for 2 minutes about what is Gmail and Google Calendar. And so what you end up with is you have these 4 sections of 2 minutes each. So now you've talked for 8 minutes about Gmail and Google Calendar. Again, pretty doable, right? To have one subject on mindfulness or on meditation or on yoga for 8 minutes, doable if you go. And so you have an 8-minute recording. times 7 chapters, now you have a 56-minute or about a 1 hour book. And
Wow.
you can choose to sit down and knock out the whole hour at once. You can do 8 minutes Monday, 8 minutes Tuesday, but you have dictation, and then you send it in, get it transcribed, clean it up, and then that gives you a 9,000 word document. And then you add in, a table of contents, you add in pictures, you can easily make it a decent enough sized book. And now you have a book that actually solves people's problems because you base it around questions, and then you can go in and rename those chapter titles from questions into what the chapter is actually about. You can rename the title of your book into something more catchy and no one has to know. But now you've created something that solves people's problems and then takes them on a journey, right? Because by like the chapter itself goes from why, what, how to, what if. It starts with the problem and goes to the solution and then transitions into your next chapter or your next step in the process. So now it becomes a book that people can just fly through. And now you'll feel good about it because you created it really quickly and you created it in the same form as if someone asked you for help with electrical engineering or with getting their mindset right or in learning programming. So now it's like you've created it in the same way that you'd answer the question on the phone or something like that.
That's so awesome. I love it, Robert. And for you, what would you say is the way that the books have impacted your business and marketing systems? Like, how does the book play in for you?
So I have been having a lot of fun lately with just sending out free copies of the book. So I use it as an icebreaker. So I go to a networking event once a month in a city called Sacramento, about 90 minutes north of me. And at some of these networking events, there's like a table where you can put your book. So I'll print out a bunch of copies of the same book and I'll just be like, boom, there you go. Or if I meet someone, instead of giving them a business card, I just hand them my book. And sometimes I'll have in my emails a blast to my list and I'll say, give me your mailing address and I'll send you a copy of my book. Not even a free plus shipping, but free plus fee, right? Like I'll pay the $5 to send that to someone who's going to throw a book away. They'll card, throw away a book. And what's also good about a book is that it's impossible for you to fit everything into it, right? Because you're just looking to like help them out as much as a book can. So people are going to read your book and say, he's put all this cool stuff into it, but I know that for every one thing the book's taught me, there's 10 other things that he doesn't know. And if you can help someone just even a little bit, then they'll want to come back for more. And so yeah, I've had a lot of fun with the giving out the free copies because trying to play that bestseller game and trying to sell millions of copies. Unless you have a huge budget and you're willing to go on the road for 3 years, good luck with that. But it is a lot of fun to just like drop a book in the mail, or if you want to like land that client or reestablish contact with someone, send something in the mail, because like there are these, I spoke in front of this room of 13 doctors a couple weeks ago, and I sold on this like kind of done for you package. So I made a quick $20,000, but then there's 10 doctors remaining who are 11 who still haven't bought. So I went in and got, I think like 10 copies of this big thick book there. And I wrote a letter to them, or I'm going to hand sign each one. I'm going to put the thing in there and I'm going to stuff it in an envelope and send them all out. It feels good, especially in this day and age, to add that little bit of thoughtfulness and send someone a cool package in the mail, because nowadays it's all email, texting, Facebook, and yeah, not like a lot of people just neglect this whole mail thing. So yeah, I like the feeling of sending somebody something that's a gift for free that can also help them.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love how the structure of the book, why behind the book, is you designed it to answer the questions. You designed it to be, as quick as possible, help as possible, create the breakthrough, create the growth, create the solution to the problem. And that's so powerful, Robert. Love the mindset. And if we could wrap up this conversation with final takeaways, what would those be? What do you really want people to execute on because of this interview?
So final takeaway is that the going to sound so dirty, but the length doesn't always matter, right? And so it's easy to let our own insecurities get in the way and say, my book needs to be 300 pages.
Mm,
It's easy to say that my online be 50 hours.
mm,
And that's your own insecurities
yeah.
telling yourself that you need bigger and bigger. But the problem is that sometimes someone's going to see your big thick book and say, I don't have time to read all that.
Yeah.
Or they're going to say that you have 50 hours and you're proud of all the hours you put in, but that sounds like a mess. That sounds like a whole chore. And also, as far as the sometimes like the work that you put into stuff
Mhm.
is going to be counterintuitive. So you might spend 10 months on your passion project.
Mm.
Then I've had times where I've spent 2 days coding a simple plugin and everyone wanted it.
Mm.
So like it doesn't necessarily matter what you want. I mean, that's a good component of it, but the most important thing is what other people want. And so if you're second guessing yourself about, I need to put in all this time, or I need this big book or this big, huge course, why not create something that you made quickly, that you made in a simple way? And that might actually be better, right? Because if you made that book in a day, you were focused on it the whole time, and it wasn't something that you kept coming back to and then began dreading. You made it quickly and you were excited the whole time. And because it was a nice thin book, people got it and they got the information and they actually finished. Sometimes shorter, thinner, faster can be better, especially if it gets the job done. And you can always improve things later on. I mean, I hesitated putting out a book for 2 or 3 years because I was worried that I couldn't change the price. I was worried that I couldn't re-upload the inside of it. Turns out you can, right? Turns out if you find a typo, you can re-upload that, and then all the books that are printed afterwards come out with the better version. And many times when I go back to edit things later, when I go back to edit books, usually it's to take things out. Usually it's I say, here's this big long paragraph, and I say, this sentence can go, this sentence can go, this can be said simply, and then it ends up like the editing, is simpler, is shorter, is more concise. So don't think that bigger is always better.
People love simple. So people love simple, man. I love it. And Lisa Tuccio said, so true. Having a book that's lengthy can be overwhelming. So we got that feedback in the audience too. Love it, Lisa. Thanks for tuning in. Robert, how do these amazing listeners and viewers take that next step with you on your journey? How do they continue their journey with the great Robert Plank?
I mean, thank you very much. I don't know if I'm the greatest Robert Plank, the greatest possible Robert Plank self, but the place to go is marketeroftheday.com. That's my podcast, and we have a book out at ebook.com where, like we were talking about, I went back to my podcast guest and said, hey, you shared some great stuff. How about I take that recording, clean it up, edit it down, make it the best it can be, and put it into a book. So the central hub there is marketeroftheday.com. And then if you're interested in the book, that's makeaproduct.com.
Cool. Makeaproduct.com, marketeroftheday.com, marketerofthedaybook.com. Go there right now and get those awesome books and take advantage of Robert because he is ready. Even though it's not about the length for him, it is about how much it makes a difference.
I'm going to regret saying that.
No, but you're amazing, Robert. I super appreciate you. You deliver massive value. You have a big heart, and you got a big freaking brain to deliver it with integrity, with power, with consistency, and to be able to serve people. So I really, really acknowledge you for how you show up in the world, man. Grateful to have you on the show again. You're rocking it, and any way we can support you, I'm really happy to, man.
I appreciate you. You're the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. You're the best, too. Let's keep rocking it, and we'll see you soon, okay?
All right.
All right. Take care, bro.
You too.